Peace. I am Phillip Roundtree, and you are tuned into the January 11th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Props to those of you who are watching on Facebook Live. Again, much love to those who are tuned in on YouTube Live. Hit that subscribe button. I got a story to tell you about my daughter, but I might tell you about that next week. Because you know, every episode I always say, hit the subscribe button because I might need to monetize. Listen, I might need to. See, I was about to say might need money to bail her out, right? But I'm not going. Yeah. We not going to do the bailout. We're not going to do the bailout. But listen, man, I need to have an episode where I'm having a conversation about what it means to raise a teenage black girl. Super interesting, right? Super interesting. And even though you couldn't hear her just then, that is our special guest for tonight, Heather Mishel Williams. She goes by Michelle. That's the only name that I'll call her, or I'll call her nor this nor that. Right? She's a dope woman, a dope educator, a newly published author of what's the title name of the book? Little Z and the
And
Firefly,
Firefly.
a journey to finding light and love. I'm asking what's the name of the book. Like I read the book 3 times, and this is no lie, right? And that's one of the reasons why she's here today, so we can have this conversation. And the book was so good that I read it 3 times, because it's like I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that for the energy. I'm gonna save that for the interview, right? Because again, it's that good of a book. Sometimes when you have friends, I've known Michelle now for the last 3 years.
I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna
And
save
they be
that for
like,
the
"Hey
energy.
Phil,
I'm gonna save that
I
for
want to
the
promote
interview,
something." I'm
right?
like,
Because
"Yeah,
again,
cool."
it's
And then you
that
might
good of a
check it
book.
out. Y'all know how it
Sometimes
is.
when
It
you
might be
have
at
friends, I've
Thanksgiving. You
known
might
Michelle
give
now for
somebody
the
this their
last
first time making
last
apple
3 years.
pie,
I'm gonna save that.
right?
I'm gonna
And
save
they
that.
well,
Like, hey,
black
Phil,
people
I'm
don't
gonna
do
save
apple
that
pie.
for the
We do
something,
apple
right?
pie, but
Because
sweet potato pie. You might let them get on the reins to make the sweet potato pie, and it's just like, whoa, I love you, right? I love you, but this ain't it. But that's not the case with this book. So I want to welcome you, Michelle, to the show. First, I only gave the brief introduction of you being an educator, of you being a newly published author. But can you just give the people a little bit about, tell the people a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Michelle. I am a 13-year-ish veteran educator. I'm old. I can't quite count all the years. I currently am a professor at Temple University teaching graduate and undergrad classes. And yes, like newly published author. So that is just a snippet of who I am.
Word, word. So just getting into your background, I know you said you've been an educator now for the last 13 years. So what has that looked like for you? Do you have an area of expertise?
Yeah, so specifically special education. My very first school that I taught at, I taught autistic support for 3 years. I spent about a year and a half in emotional support, assisted with multiple disabilities, obviously specific disabilities. So those are like your learning disabilities for reading and math. So the whole spectrum. I've pretty much had my hand in every pot of special education one way or another.
Word, word. So when and I've worked as a behavior specialist within various school districts in Pennsylvania, specifically Norristown and Philadelphia, and we recognize the challenges that our black and brown children are up against, and it's even, to be frank, it's even worse when they're in special education. So can you speak to that experience?
Uh, Yeah. So, what tends to happen, like special education was never meant to be this life sentence that it is, right? It's literally called special education services. So, it should be my student is, that maybe your child's behind in your reading by 2 grade levels. Let's give them some services for a half a year, maybe 2 years until they make that progress, and then you exit them out of special ed and they're on their way to keep matriculating, into school. However, now what we do is we label our students so very young and early, like K through 3 as having, special learning disabilities or behavior issues and challenges. We like to label our Black boys as being, defiant, obedient, or disobedient. And now they have that emotionally disturbed label. So what happens is, as that student that has that, well, I'm just going to use emotional disturbed as the example. As they go into middle school, those type of disabilities are not often integrated in inclusion settings. They're typically self-contained, and because they're in self-contained classrooms, they're not getting the best, highest quality education because the setting in itself is usually very toxic, and just there's no real good curriculum for emotional disturbance. And so teachers are doing the best that they can, but they're not getting the type of education they would in regular education. So now you have your students that are in middle school, they go to high school, and now they get to me in high school in ninth, 10th grade, and they're still on like a fourth or fifth grade level, having nothing to do with their intelligence, because they were defined as emotionally disturbed because of their behavior. So there's a lot of things within the special education world that are just not conducive to the best interest of Black and Brown children. And it's just a thing that persists, and it's really hard to work in that, which is why I'm no longer working in that setting.
Yeah.
But it's a thing, man, and it's really hard to work through when you see it and you're in it, because there's so much bureaucracy and money attached to students who have
Mm.
IEPs. So that's the extra funding. And it's like, what are we doing with this extra funding if every year there's a new curriculum, a new thing? Like, no school ever sticks with something long enough to make something work and implement it. It's always these quick fixes. And it never does a service to any student, regardless of disability or not.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you gave us a lot there, right? And I think some of it is worthy of unpacking.
Uh oh.
You mentioned, and you was like, listen, no, we're gonna keep it, let's keep it tight. And I'm like, I'm gonna keep it tight, I'm gonna keep it together. But I can't help it. I can't help it because black folk mean the world to me, right? And I can't
Same.
necessarily say that my actions throughout my existence, both personally and professionally, have shown that, right? And so now where I'm at is a 38-year-old black man, father of two. I am hyper vigilant about the the experience of not only my black children but black children and black folk in general. So when I hear you call it a life sentence, I don't know if that was if that was accidental. I don't believe in accidents, right? But I think that's very much what it is, right? It's a life sentence because once you get in, it's extremely difficult to get out, right?
Yes, I was not mincing words. I said what I said. Like,
I said what I said, like a Instagram post. Yeah, and again I've seen it, and we talk about, if we're talking about emotional disturbance, we're talking about a lot of times we have these white teachers from these white universities who come into the classroom who are underprepared, right? Not and it's shoot them a little bail, right? Like they don't necessarily have the best backing right, from school districts, from schools, from superiors, or what have you. But what they want is something that we've all, especially here in America and in Western civilization, where to be in a classroom we need to be quiet, right? And we need to sit still. And we recognize, for I'll speak specifically to black boys, we recognize that inherently that's just not how they act, right? It's not how we act, and it's not
culturally,
exactly
exactly.
culturally, right?
Culturally.
And so with that being said, that's an easy way for a recommendation to be made. Why? Because they may be moving about. And so listen, we're going to give them a diagnosis of ADHD, right? We know that black boys and brown boys are disproportionately diagnosed with ADHD, and then they're giving medication when we're comparing to their white counterparts. Then they become zombies, and then they're stuck, right? They're stuck because their academics is being impacted, right?
Exactly.
So when we talk, and I digress for sure on that topic, but it's so important. I think that goes into the to some of the work that you're doing with the book, which we'll definitely get into. I know you said you transitioned away from the K through 12. Do you share
Yes.
to explain reason as to why?
Sure, there's multiple reasons, and I don't want to forget this point. To your point about new teachers coming into classrooms being underprepared to deal or just treat our students with the cultural relevance, I'm finding in higher ed that they're not being prepared. Like there's no diversity, inclusion, and equity courses in the college, like in their teacher preparation courses. So then they're having a mindset based off of textbooks and assignments that don't translate to these little boys and girls in front of them that don't look like them, and then they don't know what to do. And so being a new professor, I'm seeing this and I'm just like, okay, wow. So I know I try in my graduate courses in undergrad to supplement a lot of the material so that I'm giving them relevant material for them to use when they get in front of our Black boys and girls, because they're wholly unprepared. And now I wonder, across the board, not just the university that I'm at, like, is this like a thing where teacher prep programs literally don't have diversity, inclusion, and equity courses? Because that's a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to name that. I didn't want to forget that. But go ahead.
No, no, no. I think that's an
Okay.
important point to bring up. I'm also a professor at a few universities, and I'm actually rethinking that, right? Just because this idea of critical thinking, like this is new, and I teach at a historically black university, and I teach at a white university, and
Yeah.
this idea of critical thinking, I teach on the undergraduate and master's level, and I'm just like, no, y'all got to think a little longer, think a little deeper, right? Don't give me what this
Mm-hmm.
textbook is saying. I need you to really, really digest this information because, especially, and I teach social work courses, especially if you're going to be out in the world working with folk that look like me, right? And so
Yep.
I think, it's a cash grab. A lot of it is a cash grab, and they pay me peanuts. I don't know what they pay you, right?
Peanuts.
I'm not
Peanuts.
seeing any of the cash grab, but I do think we're pushing out professionals who aren't prepared to for the world that they're going into, or if they're already in that world. And I empathize with the MSWs, the graduate level individuals. Hey, listen, you there to get some more money in your paycheck, right? And this degree will help you.
Not by much.
Not by much, right? And
Not
so
by much from what I remember.
yeah, and I'm aware of that, but also it's just like, hey, what about the people, right? And what about the children? In the chat, Rupert Hall says creating a slippery slope to incarceration, and what he's speaking to is this school to prison pipeline that
Absolutely.
exists, right? So when we're talking about this emotionally quote unquote
Quote
emotionally
unquote.
disturbed child, right? Because that's white supremacy talk. Um, and they may misbehave within the again quote unquote
Quote
misbehave what
misbehave.
yeah misbehave in the classroom. What happens? You get kicked out the classroom, you get suspended. Next thing you
And then
know,
you're
we had
missing instructions.
if you're missing instruction, we have the faux police coming out to the home. When I say faux police, we're talking about child welfare workers coming out to the home. Well, what's happening in the home that they're not behaving in the classroom, right? And so we're getting all these systems involved, and next thing we know, they're in juvie, right? And I can attest to
Mm-hmm.
this with some of the clients that I've worked with, when in reality, many of them were depressed. Many of them didn't have mentors, and they needed an extra loving from folk around them, and they didn't receive it, right? And so they acted out in a way that was, not conducive to the classroom setting. And we had teachers who really didn't give a fuck. And yeah, we could curse on this show because it's my
Okay,
show, and
good.
this that
Because
that's
I
what we
cuss like a sailor.
And that's what we do.
I'm trying to
But
be real good.
word. But and that's shouts to Rupert Hall for bringing that up, because that is so pivotal in what we're discussing when it comes to just academics. So
Yeah.
speaking of education, I saw today in New York, because I do like to bring in current events. I saw in New York, students staged a walkout, right, at various schools, your most affluent schools, right, your Stuyvesants and what have you. Students are walking out because they're saying, "Listen, we need to go remote." Right, we
Yep.
need to go remote because this Omicron or Marion, Abercrombie and Fitch, whatever it is that you want to call it, is wild out here in these streets, right? And
It
so
is
we are,
wild.
and they're saying we're not safe, right? And so I don't know if you saw that, and I wanted to get just your reaction to that.
So I saw it this morning too, not just New York, but Chicago and Oakland.
Yeah,
These students are saying like, "Hey, yo, this isn't working." And it's not working. I'm not in K to 12 anymore, but when we last year when we were teaching completely virtually, I mean, I can only speak to my experience. I was grade level chair for ninth grade, and we did the best that we could, and our kids learned even though it was online and virtual. But like, I made extra efforts to still make school feel like school. I mean, we had virtual talent shows, we had just brain break game days for no reason, like, and they did well academically, but it took a lot. And I know K through not high school, K through 8, it was a lot. It was a hot mess. And I get that it's hard. And I get that, teachers are often very stressed out by their virtual learning, and parents are stressed out from like elementary trying to like get their kiddo to sit still. I honestly feel like being in school this year, they're getting less learning. They were getting more instruction last year being completely virtual because there was no interruptions. We didn't have any issues of fights. We didn't have any, issues with take off your hoodie or cell phone. Like, we literally just taught and we made it work and we were innovative. And I think that we are missing an opportunity to change what education can look like by forcing the status quo, because the status quo is not working. Children are dying, teachers are getting sick and dying. Like, this is not okay and it's not working. So I mean, I commend these students for what they're doing all over the country, and I hope it catches on like wildfire. I really do, because we, as educators, we want our students to have like civic duty and this, that, and the third. Don't say not like, no, not like this. Like, support them, support their voices and their advocacy, because this is not working. My mentor my mentor last week, she's substituting kindergarten. It's January. They don't know how to write their name. They don't know
wow,
their letters. She was in a fourth grade. They don't know how to do 9 divided by 3.
yeah,
Like, it's they're missing chunks of education because of absences, shortages. Like, they were better off online. That's just my professional opinion.
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that. Um, when speaking specifically to New York, this this new mayor, this new police
Mm,
officer that they have as their mayor,
I'm
and
gonna just sip some water on that.
and I don't talk about black folk, right? But sometimes you got to talk about black folk, and because France Fanon, got the book. What is it? Black skin, white mask, black skin, something like that. You're right.
Skin folk, all skin folk ain't
All
kin
skin
folk.
folk ain't kinfolk, and so outside of the talking about essential workers or calling them low skilled, and
I saw that.
they can't sit in the classroom setting or a corner office, right? And so yeah, they working at Dunkin' Donuts, they're working at Dunkin' Donuts. Sickening. He A few days ago he talked about sending there should be no fear of sending my kids back to the classroom, right? This, which speaks to the narcissism. Instead of saying our kids, right, as
Right.
a community, he says my kids. There should be no fear. Research shows that transmission is low in school, but then you see these pictures of these students leaving out and they're on top of one another. And what are we're talking about? We're talking about children, right? We're talking about adolescents.
Mm-hmm.
Adolescents. We're talking about, where they are cognitively and brain development and impulsivity. Are they? Hell, you can't get grown adults to wear a mask. I was about to fight in the gym earlier. Somebody wanted to talk to. First, I probably shouldn't be going to the gym, so it's probably my fault, right? Because I know what I'm walking into. But you got grown adults trying to have conversations without a mask on, right? So what are we expecting from individuals who their frontal lobe hasn't developed? But yet
Mm-hmm.
here he is saying they need to go back to school, right? Again, and this goes to the conversation of just disregarding our children, right? And I think it's apropos for the conversation of when we talk about your book, the disregarding of children, the feelings of children in
It's
adolescence.
gaslighting.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gaslighting wholeheartedly, full stop. And it's not conducive to the health of your teachers, your staff, your students, and you're going to see it. And it's going to show up in a very, very scary way. Like, I am very afraid for the students that are, especially your K through 3, who've like not been in actual real school because of a pandemic. Think about the millions of children who have not experienced like typical school, and like all the regression that they have and what that's going to manifest to years later. Like,
yeah,
the consequence of this is just too important to try to stick with the same, try to, what if it fit a square box in a round circle? Like, why are y'all doing this? And
yeah,
it's like you're literally missing an opportunity to be innovative
yeah.
and and like have fun with learning, teach in a different way. Like, it was hard, but we did it and we found a way. So it's just like, it's unfortunate, and our kids' mental health is going to be the consequence.
Yeah, yeah.
Hence,
I think about my
okay.
daughter who I talked about earlier, right? And I shouldn't be making jail reference, for abolitionists over here. Even in jest, it's inappropriate. But I think about her in full transparency. I got a call from her today, right? And she was in the vice principal's office, and
Oh no.
she was like, hey, hold on one second, and so her vice principal gets on the phone, and she was like, yeah, Kaylin was sent to the office. She was playing with her peers. They roughhouse or what have you. Just wanted to let you know. I was like, okay, send her back to, she goes back to the class. And I had to sit and think about the last time my daughter was in a classroom with people, right? So last year she was at a Christian school. Hence the reason why I would tell people to subscribe, because I'm paying out of pocket for tuition. But she's back in public school now, right? And so that's one transition, going from public to private, and now after
Right.
3 years in private, she's going back to public. So that's a
And what
transition
grade is
for her.
she in,
She's
so
in
I can have
seventh
some
now,
context?
right?
Ah,
She's
got
in
it. Yeah.
seventh now.
Ooh, that's a pivotal
And, and,
age.
and so we're talking about just the adjustments that she has as a young girl, right?
Sure.
Body changing and all of these things that she's navigating, thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so we have this transition from schools, and we had her of schooling virtually last year. We didn't send her in at all, and I almost forgot
Gotcha.
about that. Right? Other parents were like, "Hey, they had their kids in." It was just like, "Nah, you stay in the crib." So we're talking about 2 years she's been out of school, right? And it's not to say she hasn't gotten that social emotional development that comes with being around your peers and being in these
Yep.
environments. Why? Because she's been in virtual school, right? And so we think about the downsides of the pandemic. It's not to say she's just out here wilding and whatnot, right? But I think it's something that needs to be at the forefront of our minds as educators, as parents, as those individuals who work with young people, just about that transition that's taking place. So when you spoke about I don't even know if we're ready for the impact and the effects of all that we've experienced in the last few years. That brought that to mind.
Definitely. I also think that, like, the I just keep going back to the fact that we're missing like all these opportunities. I feel like there's a solution to every problem. Like, there's a way to make hybrid schedules where they're just in the building less time to like take off the stress and load from teachers from being in person all day and like 5 days a week, or in the stressful student. Like I just feel like we're not doing enough to like think outside the box to come up with the very best outcome, and we're either in person or virtual, and there's as if there's no way to create an in between.
Yeah.
I would like to see that happen because I feel like it could.
Yeah. One, I will give credit to I was about to put on my Dr. Carr CRT, white people voice, right? Where they go into these meetings, or these anti-vaxxers who are running up in Burger King, and anti-maskers, they're running up. I think about, I'm a social worker, so we look at things from a strength-based perspective. No matter how effed up you are, you have a strength. These
Mm-hmm.
individuals who are like F Black history, F Brown history, under the guise of critical race theory, they're showing up in droves to say, yo, y'all not doing this. Right? When they ran up in the Burger King, and the white guy had his civil liberties were being infringed upon. He had the MLK shirt on. It again. New York is becoming Florida and Texas, right? I'm
Because I
convinced
haven't
of
heard
that.
about that one, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have to
yeah.
look
It
that
was,
up.
yeah. They ran up in the Burger King, and they demanded to be served. It was about 50 of them, right?
Oh my
But
god.
we but I bring that up to talk about the lengths they will go to. They're fearless, right? When we think about these white folk, these white supremacists, these white terrorists, white nationalists rather, who showed up on January 6th, they like, yo, F all that. It's gonna be what it's gonna be. Right?
And now they're running for school boards.
And they're running for school boards, and so they're getting active there, and they're running for state and local positions
Mm-hmm.
within government. And so I bring that up because a lot of the chatter that I see, and it's just just a conversation for another day. I see a lot of conversation on socials, and it stays on socials, right? It's people
Mm-hmm.
not out here in these streets, like Debbie Mom, who's saying, yo, they just unveiled a Harriet Tubman statue down City Hall. Don't ask me why. Right? That's like, I saw it. Who was it? It might have been Gabe Bryan. It was somebody. He said, "Yo, let the ancestors rest." You know what I mean? Stop wheeling them out for every little thing.
Yeah.
Um, but and I but and these white folk who are like, yo, forget that. I don't want them to learn that, and so they're
Mm-hmm.
showing up. I think part of the issue is, for whatever reason, folk aren't showing up to say, yo, my kid's not coming to this school. Right? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and it's for reasons we understand, right? Because they have jobs, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they have other things that they have to do. But I think that lack of advocacy has caused harm. I think we would see a Mayor Adams, his feet will be held to the fire if all these folks outside of the students walking out and them not showing back up. The parents was also out here, right,
Mm-hmm.
with them saying,
Yeah.
and not just tweeting about it, right, or making an IG or Facebook post about it.
Yeah, I can see that. I think people prioritize what they need to for survival. And I think that for folks who have the privilege to not be so bound to money to survive, have the time to just show up January 6th because they ain't got shit else to do.
Yeah.
Whereas Black and Brown folks, we have to really strategize like, can I do I need to go to work or do I need to do X, Y, and Z to advocate? Right. And I feel like we're choosing, and I don't want to judge, but I hear what you're saying, where like we need to be putting the fire to everybody else as well, just as hard. And we need to be running for these school boards, and we need to be running for these state elections. And, because one thing about white folks is they know how to play the game, and the game is the democracy. The game is like being in office and taking over in these spaces where they can manipulate outcomes that often don't serve us.
Yeah, yeah. There needs to be violence, right? That's
Oh
what.
no,
And no,
never
no,
gonna
no,
say
no,
there
no,
needs to
no,
be
no.
violence.
I'm not necessarily talking about physical violence, even though I do believe, and with I always talk about Tupac at the end of Kendrick Lamar's "Mortal Man" song, where he talks about what is it going to take, and he said, listen, you know. These folk gonna start looking appetizing. It's gonna be bloodshed. Folk gonna get tired of just you know living with the status quo, right? And they're going to be
Yeah.
upset and they're going to be frustrated. And so when I talk about violence, I'm talking about the same type of violence that these white, and again, it's their white privilege that has them going up in these spaces screaming and yelling. We don't necessarily get that. But I'm reading Dr. King and his autobiography, and it's like, yo, can't be afraid to get arrested. Can't be
Yeah.
afraid to be escorted out of places. I posted a
Yeah.
video of a 70-year-old black man in Florida who showed up to Ron DeSantis
I saw that.
press
Yeah.
conference. He
Mhm.
rolled up in his scooter, him and his squad. It was some
Yep.
older black women and it was him. And he said, "Listen, I just want to talk to the man. Right? I got some
Yeah.
questions." And
It
they
was a
got it
press conference and
exactly.
they wheeled him right on out of there.
But I'm sitting there looking at that like, and I had to, I shamed myself, right? Like, here you go, got this brother 70 some odd years of age. He's being led out by police because he believes in something. Now, not to say that, it just made me feel that I could be doing more, right? And
Right.
especially for somebody who who doesn't have that fear, right?
Mhm.
Who doesn't have that fear. All right, at some point, that OG, I need to walk with him and other OGs and saying, listen, you could pass the mantle, or I'm gonna be
Yeah.
right there with you to take it. But it's this idea, like, that was violence in a purest form, right? Like,
Sure.
listen,
That good trouble.
exactly that good trouble. There's a perfect way to say that. Um, it's no perfect segue into this conversation, but I think we spoke a lot about just the wellness of children and the wellness of
Sure.
educators within the system. And so, getting to your book, Little Z and the Firefly, A Journey to Finding Light and Love, which is a lot about self-love, the love of others, your social emotional wellness. Can you speak about the impetus for you to write this children's book?
Sure. So I wrote this children's book going on 4 years now, in a very dark time. So, like, when you read the book, Little Z starts in a dark place. I was in the dark place when I wrote this book, but simultaneously, while being in the dark place, I had my Aunt Etta really pouring into me. She was the one teaching me about mirror work. Look in the mirror and say those three words, I am enough. And that was hard. It was hard to do that. So I was like beginning my journey of healing and then took on the responsibility of taking in one of my students who was in crisis and need. And she ended up staying with me for about 3 months, 3.5, 3 months. And I so my aunt was my firefly, and then I became little Z's firefly, and it was just a whole lot of healing and turbulence and joy and a lot of learning happening all at once. And all the 7 steps that are in the book were the things that I was just like trying to pour into her as fast as I can because I knew it was temporary. I knew, it wasn't going to be a long stay, but within those 3 months, I poured everything I had into her. And about a month and a half in, this story just kind of came to me. I would often doodle the sketch of Little Z, even though it wasn't named Little Z yet. And then my like creative process is really like weird. Like it just comes on like a switch. And then when it comes on, I have to get it all out. So I drew the whole book in like a 24-hour, 48 hours period. And then I went back and added the actual manuscript and words to the images. So like I needed just to get that story out visually. And then eventually it all kind of came together. I just really want this book to be a tool and a resource, because I think that parents, especially right now, are needing a resource to help with their children because they're seeing their children go through a lot of emotional turbulence from not being in school or just just life in general, because little people go through all the same emotions that we do.
Yeah.
We don't typically honor what they're saying, right? Like we don't give them that grace. We usually tell them like, you ain't got no bills, what you sad about. But they're sad about something, and it's our responsibility to listen. So I really want this book to be a guide, in addition to the book, I have coming out a workbook. So it'll be an actual physical tool, and it's designed for like the parent to implement and help frame some of the activities, like giving them the why and how to implement this into daily life. Because all the tools are like daily life skills, things that you can make a habit of to keep yourself well. And so the workbook is almost done. I just got to finish up a handful of pages, so that's coming as well. But my overall goal for this is to one, turn it into a curriculum. And then the big goal is to turn it into a mental health app for children, because I think that would be just really, really cool. We're in a digital age.
Yeah.
They're coming out the womb knowing how to use the iPhone. So, I mean, we
Hey,
might as well go ahead.
you mean Galaxy, Android. That's what you mean. But I
Oh
digress.
man. I know we used to be Android buddies, and I switched over to
Oh,
the
you
dark side.
rolled.
I
Wow. I wish
did.
I would have known
I
that before
know.
agreeing to this interview, right? I think that would
Ooh,
I think that would change things. I think that would change things. No,
no, it
so
wouldn't.
no, you're right. It wouldn't. It wouldn't. As I said in the opener when I was about to do the spoiler without the spoiler alert, right? Because I'm that's another conversation, but just about spoiler alerts and is there really such a thing? Should you be really giving
There are.
spoiler alerts? Is it? Let's be
Oh,
clear.
there definitely are
Because if I
spoiler
want to
alerts.
say Dexter got killed by his son on Dexter on Sunday, I feel like
Oh
wait, time out, time
no,
out.
you didn't, y'all. The disrespect, because I was on episode 9. Bye, y'all. This is really
I
fun.
listen.
I'm
I don't know if
leaving.
we should go to a commercial break or what have you. There is no commercial break. I am the producer. I am the host. So we're here now, right?
It's okay. I'm gonna take a deep breath. I'm
But
gonna pause.
you don't know why. You don't know how. So it's reason to do it. I don't think there's a listen. We all got the same
Shame
20.
him in the comments right now. Okay.
Yeah, feel free.
Shame
Feel free.
him.
I apologize. I said I asked, but I didn't take you as a Dexter watcher, right? I didn't take you as a Dexter
See,
watcher, but
out
that's
here
my bad.
judging. That's what you
Yeah,
get, right?
exactly. See, I should have did some mirror work, and I should have reflected on what I was going to say before I said it. And so yeah, earlier when I was going to do a spoiler, because I said I read it 3 times and it was fascinating to me. Um, what was interesting outside of just the overall idea, the premise of the book were the individual characters, right? And so without giving too much detail, without spoiling it, can you speak to just the relationship?
Yes.
First, speak to just a little bit about Little Z and the Firefly and their
Firefly.
relationship with one another.
Sure. So Little Z, if you don't have the book, then you don't know, obviously, but their gender, the gender is neutral. And I did that purposefully because I wanted any little boy or any little girl to identify. There's tons of children's books out there, but they have features, right? They have like actual features to them, which is why Little Z is a stick figure. So that was one concept. And Little Z is like in the dark place. There's someone that is struggling. Their stress and anxiety is manifesting in anger. It's manifesting in like oversleeping, being stubborn, trying to do things their way. And they realize, oh, well, don't actually go like that. And then Firefly is he's really ambitious. He wants to help. He is determined to just do everything that he can do, but he has to learn a lesson also. So Firefly would be like the caretaker, the parent, the teacher, the counselor. Um, he 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 realizes that he can't fix Little Z, and that the best way to help someone is to provide them the tools. And so that's what he goes on to do. And I think what's really unique about the characters is that they're so interchangeable. There's really like key details in the book, like the crown. You'll notice that Firefly, when they're feeling down, that their crown actually shrinks down and it's really, really
Mm,
small and it's not quite as
wow.
bright. And that's similar to Little Z's crown in the beginning of the book. It's really small, real small, not bright like this, but as the book progresses, you see that it's becoming full and bright and big, and it like fits them real well. And so there's a lot of little key elements in there, but that's pretty much the relationship. Anyone can be Little Z. anyone could be Firefly. I
Yeah.
was Little Z and Firefly at the same damn time. Now that was a whole thing,
Hmm.
but I did what I had to
Oh,
do because I
oh,
love my
tell
students.
yeah, just speak a little bit more to that. Just to you being Little Z and Firefly, because it's this how we often have to show up, right? Where for others, when we're not necessarily our in the best space, but yet we're tasked with having to be the light for others. So can you speak to that?
I can. So there's been a lot of reflection. It was really truly a journey between me and Zoe. And do you remember meeting Zoe? I feel like you did, Phil, because I used to bring her with me to Uncle Bobby's.
I don't think I've met her. I
Okay,
think I
maybe
remember
not.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So Zoe, and me trying to help Zoe, I found that there's like a type of person, they're like the different personalities is like one of them is the helper, but it's also like a detriment. Like you help to the point of not taking care of yourself. And you also help because you want the person who you're helping to just kind of just give you that praise or give you, your flowers because you're helping them so much. I found that throughout me and Zoe's journey that I was relying a lot on just like me pouring into her and think like as like to not deal with my own shit basically. Like I would like let me zoom in and focus on Zoe so much that I am just going to wear myself out and drive her 5 different places, 6 different places a week to these therapists and this, that, and the third, all because I'm just have a bleeding heart and I care and love about this student. When really I was like not dealing with my own shit,
Yeah.
and like processing the trauma that I experienced. And so it became it ended up being like really healthy and beautiful in the end, like where we are now. But I recognize that in my desire to just help and save, right? I was trying to fix Zoe, that I was neglecting my own health at some rate. It's like I knew I had to give her the tools, but I wasn't doing what I needed to do for myself emotionally. And I had to really take a beat. Like I really had to take a beat and reach out to my therapist and get that ball rolling because it's it's a lot. Like the stuff that I experienced kind of it knocked the wind out of me, and I'm just now kind of getting getting my pep and my step back. So that's been 4 years of a journey there.
And like Greg Corbin, who's in the comments, said, "Thank you for your transparency." Right, because that's important. I don't necessarily know if, and again, I can't answer this for you or speak to it, but I don't necessarily know if this book would have been able to come out if you hadn't been truthful and honest and with yourself. Is that a
Yeah.
fair assessment?
Oh my God, it's super fair. I think
Yeah,
about that all the time.
yeah.
So, if we're being super transparent, I wrote this book about a year and a half after my sexual assault.
Mhm.
And it was pretty ugly that first year. Like, victims of sexual assault can have a range of different responses, and mine were super unhealthy, like super unhealthy, not surrounding myself with people who had my best interest in mind. And here I am, like teaching children every day and, loving on them and, giving them encouraging words and steering them in the right direction. But off the clock, I was a hot, holy mess. Um, and so I think about how I never would have I never would have wrote this book. It wouldn't have hit the same. Um, I don't even know if I would have. I don't even know if I would have taken in my student. Her traumas were so aligned and deep that I could relate to, that I just wanted to save this child basically from being me, really. and spiraling in this really unhealthy way. But I do think about that, and it's a real blessing. I've always just kind of I've always knew that it can't, like, when you go through something, it's not for nothing. And I always had that kind of attitude, like, this can't be for nothing. Like, what someone meant to do to harm me planted a seed. And so I've kind of kept that affirmation in my head. And even 4 years later, I haven't bloomed, but my bud, like when a flower bud like starts to kind of peel away, that you see like the beautiful color on the inside, like that's where I am, like right now. And that's been 4 years. And so I'm grateful that I had the experience of pouring into Zoe and taking her in. Like, I don't really desire to have children. So I always tell Zoe, look, you're it, kid. You got to win. You got to do this thing because, you're all I got. And she affectionately calls me Madre. And so, like, I'm still there for her. We talk often. It's just, it has been a true, true journey, um, that would not have happened actually had I not experienced a sexual assault.
Mark also says many activists and caretakers do this to escape themselves. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's such important point. As you were talking, I had like this aha moment, right? Because, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
therapist by trade and I ain't trying to therapize,
Oh, I about to say,
therapize,
there we
therapize, therapize you, right? But I was just thinking, yesterday I had some brothers on. We were talking about sobriety. Um, I've talked about how you know when I go and do these speaking engagements or when I have this show about sobriety, it's cool that other people can glean something from it.
mm,
But the reason why I did it, this is for me, right? Like
right.
me having those three brothers on, that's about
Yeah.
me, right? This is about
Yeah.
saving myself, right? This is about preserving myself and saving a part of me that might have gotten lost in the shuffle, whether it was due to a sexual assault, whether it was due to other types of trauma, depression, anxiety. And so listening to you talk, it's like you you had to save yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had to come to that realization. And so possibly part of saving Zoe, right, was also saving yourself, right? And you viewed it
Mm-hmm.
from that lens. Again, I'm not here to therapize you. You know what I mean? That's like that's
No,
just
you're
free
you're not
99 game. That's
you're
just
not
free.
off the mark.
Word,
You're
word.
you're not off the mark on that for sure.
Yeah, and it's no different than this, right? Like again, I talked about, again in the beginning, it's just like when your friends like, hey, can we talk about this, right? I got something new. It's just like, oh, what you got, right? And so I sat and I read it, and it resonated with me, right? It resonated with me as a 38-year-old black man, and how we talk about things, such as, this fake it till you make it, right? And that was part
Yep.
and parcel for the conversation that we had last night with sobriety. The brothers on there were talking about, yo, being in a lit function, I didn't want to be the down person, right? I didn't want to
Right.
be the only one not engaging, right? So
Right.
I, whether I had low self esteem or what have you, I indulged as a result of that, right? Because I had to fake it till I
Yep.
make it, even though I knew what the consequences were, right? I'm gonna feel sad the next day. My body's gonna be aching. I'm gonna have this drinker's remorse. Like I'm never drinking again. We know how we do that so often, right? When things
Yes.
get real, and so that resonated with me when we talk about again that dark place, me living with depression and anxiety, and just knowing what that dark place looks like, right? I can paint a picture of it, right? Might
Yeah.
maybe not as pretty as Little Z and Firefly, right? The artwork for that, but I know what that looks like. I know what it means
And
to be a helper, not taking care of myself, but being a helper for others, and sitting in the therapist's office and she's telling me, Phil, yeah, intellectually you get it, but you gotta feel it. And it's something not congruent that's taking place. You go talk about
right.
black mental health and all that there, but when it comes to you, you don't believe it, right? And so it's just
Yeah.
like you see the little Z in the Firefly, and this duality that exists, is, especially within Black and brown folk, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that's super unique and beautiful about the book is that yes, I wrote it as a children's book, but like even the reviews on Amazon, like one of them was from one of my very good mentors. She was like, I started reading it as a children's book, but by the time I got to page 2, I realized this is for adults too. Like it's such a translated, it translates so easily to to all ages, and it was hard to actually pick a genre and age range because I'm like K through 100, like it's for everybody.
Yeah,
Because I care deeply about mental health of adults, so I wrote a children's book. I don't want kids to don't wait till you get to me when you're 16, 17 years old in high school and I'm trying to unlearn and undo a lot of the unhealthy coping mechanisms, excuse me, that you've found. Let's start when they're young, because emotions start when they're young, like
yeah,
literally. So I really just hope that it is something that will help even just one child. If
yeah.
one child is helped by this, it would make all this worth it.
Yeah, yeah. And, again, not to sound like the therapist, right? But we're talking about, when we talk about the children and adults, adults still have that inner child, right? And so
Exactly.
when you brought up, like, I had the design for it, and before I even necessarily had the words, I just had to get this out, right? It's like
Hmm.
that's the inner child in you, that creative aspect of you that so many of us as adults were told to, all right, unless you are an amazing painter, right, an amazing artist, you're not gonna be coloring. We're not gonna be drawing, right? Especially for Black men, you're just like, oh, you got to put that to the side. And so here you
Right.
are allowing this inner child, this creativity to come out and manifest itself in this way. Um,
Yeah. I just want
before,
to
go ahead.
actually, oh, go ahead. I
No, no, no,
actually
go
do
ahead.
want to shout out, I do want to actually shout out my illustrator because she did
Yeah,
a
she deserves it.
beautiful job um, translating my sketches to like this digital format, because the sketches are literally the pictures that I drew. Like she did phenomenal. And like to have someone bring the vision in your head to life and you're 100% satisfied. Like I'm not 99.9% satisfied, like 100%. And so I do want to give kudos to Caitlin. This was one of her like first major like projects to work on professionally, so it was an
Yeah,
honor to work with her. Actually, we actually just met in person for the first time
I saw
last
that
Saturday.
picture. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the whole
Where's she
time
from?
since last April, from Maryland.
Maryland. Okay.
Yeah, from Maryland. So it was really cool to meet her in person, and that same energy was there. It was really great. So kudos to her.
Yeah, yeah. The entire creative process, right? Is, and again, I'm not spoiling. This is not a spoiler. Not like I did Dexter a few minutes ago. But this is the same thing. Like, you got little Z and you have this helper, right? Not savior, but you have this helper who comes into life, into their life rather, and to add value, right? And to
Yeah,
collaborate. And how can we go from point A to point B together? So you have Caitlin.
together.
I know in the in pre-production you mentioned Cobb in the front pond. He stopped through for a minute. He threw up one of these. I don't
Yes.
know if this is a gang sign or what. Cobb, he's it's my African brethren. You know what I mean? I don't. He got to let me know. Does this mean peace? I'm
Shout
not
out to
sure.
him.
But
Shout
yeah,
out to him.
but shout out to the brother. Yeah, man, because again, it takes a. He said he back. Yeah, shout out to him because it again. We have these ideas, we have these creative ideas, and sometimes we get stuck in this. I'm just gonna do it myself. If anybody knows
Oh
about that,
no.
that's me.
That,
You know what I mean?
that
Like,
well that's definitely not me. I'm one of them
Yeah.
type of people. Like with Kabana, with my book trailer, like he's gonna vouch for this. I like said, okay, Kabana, I want to do a book trailer. And so I Googled a bunch that I like really liked, and then I sent it to him. And then we had to go back and forth. He's like, this isn't exactly what I do. I do more like this. And then he's like, maybe you can like find a different person. I think he even like gave me the name of like someone else I could use. And I'm like, no, I want you. Like I said what
Yeah.
I said, like
Yeah.
I want you. So like we reworked it, and I sent him like other things like that I wanted, and it came out exactly like how I wanted. One thing about me, like I know what I don't know. I know
Yeah.
what I know and I know what I don't know. And I'm not afraid to ask for help. And I want to work with people who look like me, who are in my network. If they do good work, like I pick people who make good sweet potato pie. You know, I'm not I'm not reaching out. No offense, but I'm not reaching out to folks whose sweet potato pie don't hit.
Yeah.
Like I knew Kabana did great work. I saw Caitlin's work before, so I was just like, yes. So definitely bringing sharing the love and network as far as I can, even to my swag. Actually, if y'all see my swag, hey, Lil Z, if y'all are
Word.
interested, by the way, in merch, y'all let me know because I didn't plan on selling these, but I might have to.
Hey, you got.
The
I'm
person who
sure
did
you
my,
got student loans. We all got student loans, even though we
I
don't
do still
pay
have
them.
to pay off. I
We
know
don't
I
pay them,
still
but
technically have to pay off my masters. Come on, Biden, do a little something. But yeah, man,
shit. Never mind.
anyone
You
in
about to
my
have me go
network.
another way.
Yeah,
You
please
about to have
don't.
me go.
Please don't.
No, but I think what you brought up is such a such critical. Like we're not in this alone, right? And so
No.
maybe your next book will be Phil allow people to help you. Phil asks
I see
for
what he's
help.
doing
You know
there.
what I mean? It
I
might
see what he
be
did
that
there.
might be the next book. I just need 99.9% royalties from it.
See, see,
Black capitalism, man. Black capitalism. No, but
it's a
before
thing.
before we wrap up, I do want to talk about things again. I said that I'm a therapist, so you have these 7 tools that, and that was one of the things that also stood out. So it's not only a feel good story, right? Because feel good stories are important, but sometimes we need um, um, measurable tasks, right, to implement into our wellness journey. And so you've
Yeah,
identified 7 tools. So can you speak to them and to the importance of you
sure,
having that into the book, having that in the book?
sure. So yeah, there's 7 tools. They are numbered 1 through 7, but they're not like sequential of importance or anything. The first one is mirror work, and that's obviously just reciting positive affirmations. I mean, we know the science behind affirmations, what it does for our brains, and like the self-esteem and self-efficacy and self-image that it does for us. And so I thought that was really important in the workbook. When you guys get the workbook, you'll see that one of the tips is to place them in high frequency areas. So put them on your mirrors, put them on the fridge, put them where your child is going to see them daily as daily reminders, and then also attach a goal to it. That way it becomes this concrete thing. So maybe you want to get all A's in your report card. So every day before they leave, I am smart, I am capable, and I will get all A's. So now that affirmation is like rooted in an actual goal. The next one is create order. That one was really like a personal one for me. I like, who walks into their house and their house is a hot mess, you feel like you're a hot mess, right? Like, but when you walk into your house and it's clean, like it just feels good, right? Like I
Yeah.
walk into my bedroom, my bed is made, it's immaculate, it just feels good in that space. And also, it's kind of and you can tell me, Phil, how spot on or not I am with this, but like letting giving kids control, like giving them tasks like let's make sure books are always put away, or make sure your shoes are always lined up, or make sure like that, giving that child a sense of control over their physical space helps them feel better. And I think there's like a science to that, because I know how I feel. And I know, like with Zoe, like the one thing she did, the only thing I needed her to do was make her bed like every morning. make that bed, and it feels good to walk in that space and the bed is made and it's something that she did, she accomplished, something that she put right, even though the rest of anyone's life, right, might be like a hot mess. There's
Mhm.
still that one thing that you were able to control. How on am I with that, by the way?
No, you're very spot on. If we look at the white philosopher, white psychologist, Eric Erickson, he has these psychosocial stages where it's different age ranges for them. But when we talk about things like autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt, right? It's trust versus mistrust. It's talking about allowing them room to make mistakes. It's allowing them to explore their environment in a safe way, right? It's about giving them some, and when we allow them to explore, we're giving them responsibility, right? And as they get
Right.
older, we offer opportunities for more responsibility.
Yep.
But no, it's definitely spot on, and we think about it, right? I was having this conversation about how everything we do is about reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part of the problem with Western civilization in America in general, it's
Thank you for
about
speaking on this.
it's about the extrinsic
Yep.
reward, right? What am I going? How much money am I going to get? What do you want to give me, right? And not necessarily that feel good, right? Like I just feel good in my being. I made a
Mm-hmm.
smile that I might get from helping you out, right? And
Yeah.
so children, this is especially important because it helps build self esteem. Right, it
Yeah.
helps them trust themselves. It helps them trust others. And so, if we see any issues in this area, any overprotective parents and things like that, we it stunts their growth, right? It can
Yeah.
stunt their socio emotional growth.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning the intrinsic motivation. That was a big part of creating order too, because I want in the workbook there's a lot of reflection. There's a lot of how does that feel now that you've created order for a whole month because you marked it down in your little calendar. How does that feel now that you've accomplished that thing? Is always like super important for kids to like check in with themselves, and that is very relevant throughout the workbook. The next tool is journaling, which we all know is like super great for processing our thinking and problem solving. And maybe you want to have a conversation and you find that you're feeling anxious about it, write it down first, script it out,
Yeah,
like write what you think your parent might say in response or a teacher might say in response. So that's journaling. Finding joy is also one that I really love. It's like intentionally doing something that gives you joy, like finding what that thing is really really early, and then marking down, keeping track of the dates of when you did that thing that really caused you joy, because maybe you look back and you're like, darn, I haven't done that in a while. Let me do that, like as a reminder. I think it's really key for kids to find that. Did you want to speak on that?
yeah, no, I'm completely in agreement with you. It's
Oh, okay.
funny. I think Kabana and I have had this conversation probably some time ago, over a year or two ago, and we talk about when that, and it's not, I don't believe in imposter syndrome anymore. That's a product of white supremacy. That's what it is. When you start to feel inferior, that's white supremacy. But we had this
Yes.
conversation about when we're doing these events, right? These engagements, we have these tasks. Put them on paper, right? Write it, put it down. Sometimes when I
Mm-hmm.
like when I go to apply for like a teaching position, I see my CV and I'm like, oh snaps, I did this, right? And sometimes we
Yep.
need to we white inferiority, right? Exactly, Greg. Thank you. We look at it and we know that feeling that we get, and sometimes we're not going to
Mm-hmm.
be in the best space, right? And sometimes we
Yeah.
need to reflect on where
Yep.
we've been and something tangible to look at,
Yeah.
right? To remind
Yeah.
us of that. So no, I think that's extremely important.
Thank you. The next one is talk it out. I really like this one. In the workbook, you first have to start off with identifying 4 people in your care circle. So for me, I'm envisioning a parent sitting with their child, creating that list with them, that so they know that it is appropriate. Because sometimes the parent might not be on the list, and sometimes maybe like you don't want to be on your kids' care circle list, because you want them to be able to communicate, with folks that you trust, because maybe they might feel a little anxious. I know I couldn't talk to my parents. So when I was thinking about talking it out and kind of rolling out what that would look like for a child, I wanted to make sure that they had options, in case mom, dad wasn't an option.
Yeah.
So they start off by identifying who they trust in their care circle. And then there's just like a log, like they just log every time they needed to go to that person to, talk something out or talk something through. The next one is healthy diet and exercise. That one's pretty straightforward. You eat like junk, you're going to feel junky, right? Like really having them get in the habit of noticing what they're eating by keeping food journals, and then like tips in there about like what's healthy and what, what the food does to your body, like the brain wise, like really making sure they connect it with their body. Again, that whole theme of like having them check in with themselves, and then practicing mindfulness. That one is again pretty straightforward. It just teaches them how to do the breathing of big belly breathing, which I know right? Like the inhale and exhale,
Yeah.
and then checking in. So like at first they'll write, how do they feel right now? Meaning I'm hot, I'm angry, I feel frustrated. They practice the mindfulness and then they reflect afterwards. It's like, now how do you feel? And I
Yeah.
want them to get in the habit of noticing that they don't feel as hot. They feel a little bit more calm, and just to keep a running log of all the times that they practice mindfulness. So that is the steps. In the beginning of each step, I have a parent side that kind of has the why.
Okay.
So parents know like the rationale with why these steps are important, and then also how to frame it and implement it. Because sometimes parents don't really know, right? They don't have the language to, like, I know my kid needs this. I don't really know how to say it.
Hmm.
Well, I got you. I thought about that. So I have just a little blurb of how to frame and roll it out. But the very first thing that kids do in the workbook is identify where in their body they feel the dark place, um, which is important, right? Obviously, right? Like when I'm feeling anxious, I feel it in my belly. When I'm
Yeah.
feeling really depressed, I feel it in my heart. Maybe when I'm feeling angry, I feel it in my hands. I might get like clammy and sweaty. Really getting them in tune to be able to recognize their symptoms in their body and connecting it to like, oh, okay, wait, I'm getting anxious because I'm feeling this. I know what to do. Let me go do X, Y, and Z. So that's like the very first thing that a kid does in the workbook.
Word. That's dope.
That's it.
That's dope. No, listen, I appreciate you expounding on these seven tools because they are necessary, right? And
Yeah.
again, not just for young people, but for adults as well, because we take for granted that they have the language to be able to articulate themselves. I'm sure we've been in
Right.
relationships at times with in just in relationship with people who don't necessarily have the words to express
That
themselves,
emotional
right?
intelligence. Yeah.
Exactly. And sometimes they got to start from the bare minimum. So it may
Yeah.
be a a introductory type of
Yeah.
book, but that has so much value, like Little Z and the Firefly.
Yeah.
Word. Listen, this is I was like, yo, he was like, how long is this gonna be? I was like, listen, I let the ancestors guide us. You know what I mean? I let the ancestors guide
No, this
us.
was good. This was good. Thank you
Word.
so much for having me.
No
I
doubt, no
hope
doubt.
everyone can get the book and then
Yeah.
get the workbook and
What
all
don't
that
don't
jazz.
let me can I put you on? All right, let me
Oh
put you on.
yeah,
All
go
right, so
ahead.
yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
let me
Go
do it.
ahead.
So Michelle, how can people get the book?
Well, thank you, Phil. You can get my book on Amazon.com. You can go on our website, www.littlezandfirefly.com. And also, if you are a small bookstore owner, independent bookstore, it's also published through Ingram Sparks. So you can buy it wholesale, and I'd be happy to come to sign them.
Word, word. And so how can people keep up with you and all the work that you're doing?
Yes. So our Instagram, I keep saying our, like there's multiple. It's just me. It's a
No, that's what you no
one
no
band.
that's what you're supposed to do because in the description you'll say we're in conversation with it's just me,
Yes.
right? But it's just me in conversation with you. But you got to do the we, so you're ahead of the game.
Yeah. I certainly have had a lot of help from friends. I'm super grateful. My website like really looks great, and my friend helped me with that. So shout out to you. So yes, you can find me on Instagram at little z underscore firefly, and you can follow me my personal page if you want. I'll just post selfies, but it's nor this nor that.
Word, word.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we got to do this again. Maybe part two
Yeah,
of
man.
Little Z and the Firefly meets Phil at the gym, right? To help me
See,
with.
y'all, he's trying to get a sequel out of this.
You
I see
got
what you're
to.
trying to
You got.
do.
Word, you got. That's what we do, man. It's collaborative. Did we just spend a whole 12 minutes talking
You
about
right.
collaboration? And here
You
I am.
right.
I'm stepping out of my comfort zone.
You
Right? I'm
right.
stepping out
You're
the
gonna
comfort
be my
zone.
professional consultant on all things mental health in the book. How about that?
Word. Well, listen again, Michelle. Thank you for coming through. People go and cop the book or the ebook, Little Z
Absolutely.
and the Firefly: A Journey to Finding Light and Love. I may be back tomorrow. I may not be back tomorrow. Y'all know how this thing go. It goes how I'm feeling energetically. But if I'm not back tomorrow, I will be back on Monday so we can have some healthy conversation. Props to Cobb and props to Rupert, Greg Corbin, whose book Breathing Ashes is also out right now. Breathing Ashes, a poetic guide to walking through the fire and coming out reborn.
Ooh.
We got to get him up here
Ooh.
so we can, because and I think
Yes.
these conversations are all interrelated, right? It's just black folk doing the work to be
Yeah.
whole, right? Or I think we're already whole, but it's important for us to recognize
Yeah.
our wholeness and bringing that to the forefront so you all can go out and cop that. I might have said Cobb. Shout out to you. Shout out to the homie Marla. Shout out to Avisa for coming through. Everybody hit that subscribe button. Do it on YouTube. I appreciate you. Until next time, peace.
Yeah. Peace.